this is good stuff. Because these are what acceptance is one of these really challenging words in my profession. Much like the word respect, it's these buzzwords that people use. So acceptance can be. There's a couple of definitions that I'm aware of when it comes to acceptance. Let's say the first definition of acceptance. Acceptance is the antonym to denial. Denial is when you don't believe that something is real, or you're not even looking at it. You're not even noticing it. And that's what they say by you're in denial. You're thinking that's not true, or other people are noticing it, like, hey, there's a car coming, but you're just looking this way, and you're just like, doo, 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 doo. In denial. Okay? Acceptance is the opposite of that. It's like, oh, look, here's a car coming my way. All right? That's how some people can say, when they've accepted something, they could say, I've accepted it. I don't like it, but I've accepted it. And that means they're out of denial, and they're thinking about whatever that thing is, and they're not spending their time thinking, no, this can't be true, let me find out how this is not true, because maybe this is just an illusion, maybe it's just I'm the wrong person, and maybe this is a mistake. And they could spend all of their mental time and energy working on that. So they don't do that, so they accept it. Now, that could lead them to like, well, this sucks, and I don't like this, and now I'm going to complain about it for a while, and that's fine. I mean, it's part of the process of like grieving. Okay, so there's that kind of acceptance. Okay, it's like people who accept that the Earth is spherical shaped, stuff like that. Now, there's another kind of definition of acceptance that I think relates to peace. Okay, this kind of acceptance is often talked about with people who are trying to recover from alcoholism or drug addiction or things like that, when they take the program that talks about the 12 steps. Okay, and with acceptance is basically, it's not just not denying something, but I'm going to stop fighting it. I'm going to stop resisting it. I'm going to stop trying to think of it as a problem that I have to solve. Okay. And when someone does that, they don't solve their problem. But a couple of things can happen. Number one, the problem may not bother them anymore. And that could be worth it for them. There are some problems that don't bother us. There are some problems that do bother us. There are some things that bother us that aren't really a problem. And there's some things that bother us that is a problem. Okay. So there's that. But another part of being at peace with a problem that you have and you're not trying to solve it, humans usually come up with what's called like a workaround. I could work around it. I don't have to fix it. I could work around it. People who are considered to have some sort of physical permanent disability, when they accept their disability, I guess in both ways, if they don't deny it, but if they're at peace with it, when you're at peace with it, your mind, you feel more relaxed, your mind is more open, and you have a greater ability to learn. So they learn workarounds. They work around it. And the human body, one of its strongest strengths is that it compensates. Again, so blind people can have more acute hearing. Deaf people can have more precise vision. Okay? One of the greatest things to ever witness is the Paralympics, where there's people in wheelchairs doing amazing things. But they're not doing amazing things with their legs. They're doing amazing things with their arms and their chest and their torsos. And so, but when we focus on something that is a problem and we're stressed out about it, our brain actually wants to keep focusing on it. It gets locked into that. And if you're focused on a problem and you're stressed out about it, your mind has very little room left over to think about something else, to think about another possibility, to think about a workaround. So being at peace with something is sort of like, I'm going to recognize it exists. I'm going to stop fighting it. Like if it's a disability, like I'm going to stop trying to cure it. Okay. Now, that's an individual choice. That's an individual choice from the inside. I don't think there's a right choice to make in that. Like, if, for example, back in my day, there was a actor celebrity that in the mid 1990s, he was a tall, healthy, athletic man, and he was in an equestrian accident, and he broke his neck, and he was paralyzed from like the head down. His name was Christopher Reeve. Okay, and he did not accept that he wasn't at peace with the fact that he was paralyzed. And so what he did with that lack of acceptance is that he started an organization with his wife to put in as much money and research into how to fix spinal cord injuries, how to repair spinal cord injuries. Okay, and he had this belief in himself that he is going to recover. He is going to get his spinal cord injury repaired, and he's going to walk again. Well, that didn't happen. He died 9 years later, which is actually remarkably a long time for someone who has because almost everything in your body has to be like, you're not doing it, because it's the brain's basically saying, I'll work everything up here, but down here, so he had to have a machine that would make him breathe, hooked up to him. He died still being paralyzed. But, like in the past year, thanks to, in part, the organization that he started, there is more research, more technology, and other people are beginning these it's more of a scientific probability that they'll be making their first steps, and that their spinal cord injury is healing, and it's making an improvement. So for him, not accepting, not being at peace, could have been a good thing for other people. So that's hard to say. And it's all based on, for you, what are you willing to live with? What are you willing to live with? Because everybody from the inside, we all make these choices. And these choices are almost like finance choices. They're economy choices. I'm making a choice based on what I'm aware of and what I feel that I can afford. I'm trading basically my stress for some sort of outcome, whether it's peace of mind or love and affection. It's usually something that's attached to one of our needs. So those are like the two kinds of acceptance. Yeah. And they're slightly different. Just like if somebody, they were taking a test in school, they thought they did well, they get their test back, it's a lower score than they expected. They can get like, what? No, this can't be. This is some mistake. They go to the teacher, right? This is some mistake, right? No, it's like, and then the teacher like double checks, like, oh, let me see. Nope, that's an accurate score. And then they're like, oh my gosh. And it's like, and then they could even go further, like, I'm going to get you fired, or you're a terrible teacher, or whatever, or things like that. But most of the time, a student goes, oh, shit, okay. But they don't like it. Okay, and they're still, whatever, mad, sad, depressed. What matters is, what do they do from there? Okay, now, depending on the person, I think, I don't know if I told you about this before, But roughly, if we say like 65% of the population versus 35% of the population, 65% of the population, they can get themselves motivated through painful negative feelings. Like they could be angry and that could make them motivated. Like that's not fair. And then there'll be like, now, you know what? I'm going to make sure I get 100 on my next test. I'm going to study more than I've ever done before. I'm going to pay better attention. And they're doing that all out of anger. They're not inspired. They're not happy. So I think somewhere around 65% of the population can do that. 35% of the population, no. Anger, sadness, fear, those aren't good motivators for them because it just doesn't make them move. It makes them freeze. And it doesn't make them think. It makes their mind go blank. Okay, so those 35%, if they're like that, if they're more motivated by positive, then that kind of acceptance where they should really first, before they do anything else, work on trying to be at peace with accepting, which might mean feeling sad first, but letting themselves feel sad, forgiving themselves if they feel guilty, to get to a peaceful spot. And then when they're in a more peaceful spot, then what do they do next? Then do they study more? Then what choice do they make after that? That's our emotions really, really, really influence our choices. And so it's good to know what motivates you more, if it's negativity or positivity. And then if you want to make better choices, then if you're more motivated by negativity, then of course don't try to avoid possible negative. Don't avoid the possibility that you could fail at something, because you can get mad and that can motivate you to do better. If you're more motivated by positive emotions, then it would be better for that person to, in addition to anything else that they're working on, work on how do I engineer my own body to come to terms and be at peace with something. Because when they're at peace with something, or if they're happy, or they're having fun, or they have lots of loving compassion, those emotions influence them to make better choices. It's good to know which side of the population you land on. And it's also good when you know what side of the population you land on, then you can do a better job at comparing yourself to other people. Because I'm not going to compare myself to those people over there. They're so different. I got to compare myself to people that are more like me, because it's more fair that way. And so it's a different way. So people, let's say traditionally, when it comes to people in Alcoholics Anonymous, we could say that the people who are successful, they became alcoholics because they were the type of people who needed to feel good first before they made a good decision. But they didn't know how to make themselves feel good, and they weren't lucky enough to have a lot of things work out the way they wanted it to. Things that work out the way you want them to is the first way that you learn how to be happy. It's like, oh, that's nice. Worked out. Okay? So those people, what they ended up doing was, after a while or after time, they just tried to find ways, how do I make myself happy so I could make better choices? And that basically, the brain basically just moves gradually towards, I need to find the fastest, most reliable way to make myself happy. And alcohol and drugs do that short term. And so they would do that so they'd be able to make a better decision, or believe they'd be able to make a better decision. And some people have done that. Some people have done that. There's some people who are kind of called functional alcoholics. And that means their life didn't fall apart. They're not, homeless, and they haven't lost their jobs, and they haven't, people still love them. But they have to use alcohol a lot to get through and to achieve. I don't think that's sustainable long term. I mean, but but it's functional. But then there's other people who, it's almost like trying to be your own doctor. You don't know how much alcohol you actually need to be happy. So you experiment, and sometimes you get too much, and sometimes not enough, and you just can't get the right dosage, kind of thing. And they never find, and also there's people like me that when my emotions get pretty intense, the only motivation I have is so that emotion gets even more intense. If I'm having a good time, I want to have an even better time, and that's how I would be prone to like binge drinking. Oh, I'm having, John, you having a good time? You want another drink? Sure, I want another drink. You betcha. Because I want to keep having a good time let's see how much of a good time I can actually accomplish. Because I want to be like in heaven. I want to be like on cloud 9. That's why, hardcore drugs are super tempting to me for that reason. And so that's why I could really understand like people who are addicted to opiates and like heroin, because heroin is basically your body is the most relaxed that it can be. And I'm like, man, I love that. The only scary thing is that one more level up in relaxation is death, so your body's so relaxed you're dead. Oh wow, that makes me nervous, because I would be so like, I just want to get, where's that boundary? I want to get right close. I want to get so close, and then one little mistake would be like, oops, and that's different from like tripping over something and go, oops, sorry, let me brush myself off. That's an oops I can't come back from. So I stay away from that, a lot. But so I think it's kind of like that. If you understand that you are the type of person that you need to feel good first before you're motivated, that it's the good feelings that motivate you to move, to grow, to take on a challenge, to try something that you've never tried before, or to practice something that you've already practiced for a while but you want to get even better at. Or positive feelings usually spur creative ideas. If you like creativity, if you want to invent something, if you want to be a member of the arts, then it's important. So it's not going to be like you have to accomplish something to feel good. You're going to have to feel good in order to accomplish something. But it's not like you have to be high. It's not like you have to be super happy to accomplish something. You just have to be over that line where you're not miserable, you're not anxious, you're not real angry, you're not feeling very sad, those kinds of feelings. You need to get through those feelings first. Accomplishing something isn't going to get you through those feelings. It's going to make it worse, because you're going to be less capable of accomplishing something when you're having those feelings. And you probably already know that from experience, right? When I'm anxious, I'm less able to accomplish something. And so it's a really weird for me, it's a really weird way to be, because I've figured out this is how I am, and it's really weird. It's like I feel like I'm backwards in a way, or I often explain it as in, if there was another universe behind every mirror that was in our world, I would be living on that other side of the mirror, because everybody, the 65% of the population, they seem to do things much more natural compared to how I do things in the same way, or the same things, how I do the same things. But on the other hand, apparently, I have some things that I do so naturally that people on the other side of the mirror, they don't understand, they don't know how to do it, they think I'm, Either they think I'm weird or I've got some kind of gift. That kind of thing. And the same could be true for you, too. If you think you're one of these people who, you're part of that like 35% of the people that you have to feel good first before you're motivated. And so for you, that kind of peaceful acceptance would be very valuable for you. Instead of the I'm accepting, but I'm frustrated. It's almost like, I have to get this assignment done. Like, that's accepting that you have the assignment, and you're not procrastinating, but man, you're just really stressed out, and you're just trying to get yourself through it. Even if you get through it okay, you're probably going to be exhausted afterwards. Like, gee whiz, or something like that. So, yeah, so that's a really good question about that acceptance. So I guess it is like there's two slightly different definitions. Both involve mental, but one of them goes a little bit further and involves the emotional part of being at peace with it. Because then your mind is able to do the workarounds. How do I work around this? How do I live with this? And really live. Not just survive, but to really live, to really have a good life. One that I could be proud of or I can enjoy, or things like that. Yeah. So, in the words of Forrest Gump from 1994, I guess that's all I have to say about that. You're probably not familiar with that movie, but yeah. Anyway. Yeah. So, was there anything more or anything from that you'd like to ask about or talk about? Mm-hmm. 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 No, but for example's sake, yeah, you could be happy. And the trick would be, while I'm doing the assignment, can I be thinking like this is getting me closer to where I really want to be, and I'm feeling happy that I'm getting closer, and those kinds of things. I mean, that's what I've been doing lately. I've been encouraging people I really care about who are more like me. If 2020 has been a really tough year for you, I want you to, if you can, use your imagination and seriously use your imagination to really think about what are some good things that you picture in 2021, or for some people I have them choose 2022. In the year 2022, I want you to use your imagination and picture the good things, either the good things that you have, or the good things that you'll be doing, or good people that you will be, being with or relating with or hanging out with. And get your imagination going on that, because chances are that'll make you feel good. And then chances are that will get you motivated to make goals and work towards them. Mm-hmm. 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 Yeah. Uh, Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Many people unconsciously use their imagination to scare themselves. They worry. Worry is often your imagine. It's if is you are nervous about something and your imagination goes to work. So and it's almost like we're asking ourselves, how many different bad things can happen? Or we ask ourselves, what's the worst that can happen? And our imagination goes, all right, I'll work on that. Here, how about this? How about that? Okay. And so that's our imagination. So that's proof that our imagination works. And it's just like, okay, if you go in that direction, you could use your imagination, but you could also use your imagination in this direction. It may actually be you just use it almost the same way. Like instead of asking, what's the worst that can happen? You can ask your imagination, hey, what's the best that can happen? Or what was another way that we worry? What if something doesn't work out? Okay, how about what if something does work out? And then our imagination can go to work on how many different possibilities can there be in my future? How many different opportunities? Instead of how many problems am I going to have in my future? Or how hard is it going to be for me? Most of us don't like hard work, but it could be like, well, how easy will it be once I get to this certain level? Or how many more resources will I have? And our imagination can come up with some stuff. Now, the thing is, we can come up with some stuff, but our imagination isn't like biologically, our brain doesn't want to just fixate on that. It doesn't want to spend time on that because the brain feels like, that's a waste of time. That's all nice, but that's not going to make me survive today. You know what's going to make me survive today? Thinking of those problems. That's going to make me survive. That's what I got to focus on. And if I really want to be good at solving problems, I got to think of even more problems that are going to happen in the future. And do that. See? Now I'm... And sometimes our brain can get confused. It's like, I'm really alive. Yeah, you're really stressed. It's like, you're really stressed and you're alive. Yes, that's survival. Congratulations. It would make more sense, if we lived in, worse off, war-torn countries. That would be great. That would really be effective living. You're stressed out, but you're alive. You're looking for all the possible problems, and you're alive. That is great if your country's in the midst of like a civil war. That is fantastic. But if it's not, then you're miserable. So it's almost like we would have to develop some kind of discipline for our imagination. But this is where tools come in, such as writing things down that we're imagining or sketching. Okay? Because that's using a tool to help keep our imagination going, or to keep those thoughts in our mind, instead of like, because our brain just wants to go, yeah, nice. Now, what's this over here? What's this problem over here? Because one of the things I realize is I often don't use tools to solve my problems. Why? Because my brain has no problem keeping my problems in my mind. It's like, I never forget what my problems are. I'm never like, oh, wait a minute, I had that problem today? No, my brain never does that. My brain is like, you've got this problem and this problem and this problem, and I'm just trying to make a pot of coffee in the morning. Just like, I lost count of how many scoops of coffee go into the coffee grinder. It's like, but got this problem, yes, but I want to make coffee. So that's why maybe we could use tools to solve problems, but we could also use tools to make our imagination linger a little bit more in our mind. And then it could have two things. Number one, it could help us have those positive feelings that do actually motivate us, that get us moving to accomplish something. And with a little more work and analyzing, we could take our imagination and turn something from our imagination into an actual goal. We just have to take something in our imagination, and then we've got to find it. What's the closest thing that exists in reality to what I have in my imagination? And then we got to measure that and say, okay, now we got to think of some steps to get there. And then so we can have a target. Our brains love to have a target. That's why we love problems so much, because it's a target to focus on. So, but again, it's for survival. But going to school has never been about survival. It's always been about a little bit above survival. It's about security. And then if you feel good while you're at school, and you can make friends, and then that goes to another level, and then you can explore the finer things in life, and that's another level and things like that. So, yeah. It's the fact, I think I'm believing really strongly that we need tools for our positive fed imagination, which is why we probably like entertainment so much, because entertainment is a tool to keep our imagination going. Watching a story, playing a video game. These are external tools that we use to keep our mind dwelling in that area of imagination. It's probably why the Walt Disney Company is one of the wealthiest companies in the United States, because we need tools. Mm-hmm. 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 Okay. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Um, yeah. So, yeah, basically what I mean by that in a simple way is that we cannot rely on our own mind to be positive or to train ourselves from the inside. So we need something outside of our mind that's a tool to it's like the tool to train us to be more positive. Okay? So, um now, often our thinking is triggered by either something that reminds us of something or by a question. A question usually triggers us to think. All right? So, you could train your mind to be more positive if you have in front of you, not in your mind, but in front of you, things that would be certain questions that would trigger your mind to think in positive ways. Or if you listen to something that had questions in it that would trigger you to think in more positive ways. That's one way. And then the other thing would be memories. Okay? Memories are, now depending on how much you get out of the house and how much you explore things or how much you talk to other people, you would have to be around something that would remind you of something positive in your life. So if you wanted to combine those, it would be sort of like, almost like journaling in the positive. Write down or think about the best times in your life, when you were the happiest or when things worked out the way you wanted it to, or when you accomplished something that was a challenge but you accomplished it in time. And it doesn't have to mean that you won a medal, but that you accomplished it. And that might take work, real work, because these memories, they're not that valuable to our brain. They're not that valuable. Again, it's something like, oh, that's nice, but I've got more important things to think about, like this possible tragedy that's going to happen. Okay. Something like that. Now, another thing, traditionally, or let's say according to history and anthropology, there are two schools of thought that people have used throughout the ages to help them think more positively. And when I mean positive, it doesn't necessarily mean happy or good feelings. It means constructive, or like the math, it's plus. I'm adding something to my life. I'm identifying something that exists, not noticing something that's missing. Okay. So the two trains of thought are usually philosophy or religion. These have been things that people have been gathering information, and either they do. Usually, what philosophies and religions have in common is certain kinds of mental exercises. So you could think one step at a time to think your way through from something negative to something positive, from something chaotic to something orderly, from something destructive to something constructive. Okay. Lately, I've been interested more in studying a little bit of these philosophers that are called Stoics, Stoicism. And this is the idea that your main goal is to basically be self-controlled. Don't make decisions based on anger. Don't show people your anger. Think according to logic. Really know that so many of what people talk about are really opinions. They're not facts. Don't strive to be popular. Strive to be wise. These kinds of things. So this is Stoics. And I've already told you I've had a background in religion of like Christianity or Roman Catholicism. They have certain exercises, whether they're prayers or a certain series of prayers that help people get to thinking from one kind of thinking to another kind of thinking. And so some people like to read a book in the morning or have worksheets of some kind. I'd like to collect things like that, like old tools and things like that. There are certain kinds of books that are called devotionals, which don't necessarily have to be religious. Just what they do is they have 365 entries in this book, and each entry is about a page long, so that you would spend maybe 10 minutes reading that page, and maybe spending another 10 minutes just thinking about what you read. And people usually read those books like first thing in the morning. And then it gets them maybe thinking, and then they're reminded about it throughout the day maybe. It's like, oh yeah, because I read about that this morning in my devotional book. Or they're called meditation books, but they're not really like this kind of meditation. It's like Western meditation, not Eastern meditation kind of thing. I think even Leo Tolstoy wrote his own devotional, like of his own thoughts every day of the year if people wanted to, if they're interested in his thoughts, to do something like that. So that's the thing. I've tried to really get myself into habitually asking myself questions, such as, what can I do about this? What are my resources that I have? What is good? Let me look around and find what is good, what does work, kind of thing. So those are some of the main questions that I've tried to, condition myself to kind of do. One of my favorite questions that changed my life was when I was 14, and finally getting the question in my mind when something goes wrong is to ask myself, well, John, what can you learn from this? Before then, I never knew I could ask myself that question. And that was a very powerful question. It was a very powerful question in my life. And it really helped me through my teenage years. Because it's funny, when somebody else would ask me that question when I made a mistake, my answer would be, I don't know. Or my answer is, I'm a bad person. But when I ask myself that question, I get different answers. I get like a real answer, because I'm not afraid of the person who's asking me the question. Kind of thing. Or if I can ask myself the question, that means because my brain did ask the question, it means it's probably capable of giving an answer. If it couldn't ask the question, my mind would be blank. And nothing's coming out of a mind that's blank. I'm not getting any answers from a blank page. Okay. So just the fact that I can ask that question is evidence that I can get an answer or search for the answer. It's like a sense of, at least I'm awake kind of thing. Or almost like when someone's like almost unconscious and you go, wait a minute, how many fingers am I holding up? If they could answer that, then okay. So if I could ask myself the question, what can I learn from this? Or what's good about the situation? Or what are my resources? Then that's proof that that my brain is capable of thinking in a positive way. Yeah. And so, now what some people do, I don't necessarily recommend this, but it's common. Some people try to identify and write out positive opinions about themselves, other people, or about life. But these are usually opinions that are pretty grand, you know? It's sort of like, life is wonderful and I'm perfect and, you know, there's love everywhere in my life and things like that. I used to do those. I can't say they're bad, but there's a part of our mind that when we do that, a part of our mind says, "No, it's not. What, are you kidding me? Like, this is ridiculous. Why are you thinking this way?" And we can cause some inner turmoil just by doing that. So I would say maybe try to, when you're in a good mood, see what opinions you have in your mind. Jot those down. And then those could be references, things that you could read on any other day, you know, just to remind yourself. Because we often forget about our own opinions about things because they're so embedded in us. But when we're in a bad mood, those realistic opinions, you know, they're kind of turned off. They're on hold. They're not working. Yeah. I think so. Because when we're depressed or when we're anxious, the opinions that we usually have going in our mind, they're very extreme. Okay. You know, like life sucks, or I'm terrible, or nothing ever works out for me. Okay. These are extreme opinions. Okay. Now, if you try to make yourself think of an extreme positive opinion, you're going to have a really bitter argument in your mind. Okay? It's going to be super tough. So it's much better, just like when you're trying to successfully argue with someone, you know, persuade them a little bit. You don't try to get them to go to the opposite opinion. You try to see where they're at and see if they can go a little bit more towards the center, you know, of the spectrum, you know. And so that's why sometimes rationalizing when we have this negative opinion, where I can catch myself saying, nothing ever works out for me. Like, wait a minute, John, that's not exactly accurate. There's been some things that you were surprised, but it did work out the way you wanted them to. And there was at least 5 of those things in your life. You know, I could talk to myself like that. Or life sucks. Like, oh, come on, John, wait a minute. No, life doesn't suck. It does have its sucky times. And I've had sucky years, but life itself doesn't suck. You know, I think there was this hip hop song years ago that was called 99 Problems. And the phrase goes, I've got 99 problems, but the bitch ain't one. And I think, the way I like to interpret that is, I have 99 problems in my life, but life itself is not a problem. Because when I was in high school, there was this phrase that went around that said, life is a bitch. You know, so I think when I hear 99 problems, I think, okay, I have 99 problems in my life, but my life itself is not a problem. And that helps me be more positive. And I can be more accurate. Because, like, put a number to it. 99 problems? Okay, that seems like a lot, but then it might also be accurate. I may not be exaggerating. And if I got 99 problems, I can make a list. I can use a tool, right? I can make a list. I can see what maybe some of these problems have something in common with each other, and I can organize them according to groups. And I might, when I'm looking at these problems with a tool, I might start thinking about it, and I might be reminded of somebody like, I know somebody who's really good at solving this kind of problem. I'm going to talk to them tomorrow. And that is positive, but it's not to the other extreme. It's using things like logic to get you kind of in the middle. Because when you're in the middle, it's much easier to go from middle to positive than it is to go from negative to positive. Okay, it's a very big jump to make. So, and so most of the arguments that you hear people making out in public or on the internet is really just two people exchanging extreme ideas. And they're like, oh, because like, who argues against, like, let's say Trump is the worst? Is people who say Trump is the best. It's like, and both of them are extremes, and are they ever really going to change their mind? No, they're going to get stronger in their belief. So sometimes that can happen to us inside. That can happen inside, where it's like, life sucks. No, life is wonderful. Then we go, bullshit. You know what? Now I'm mad at myself. Now I'm going to believe even stronger that life sucks. I'm going to hold on to that. It's like, that can be tough. Unless you don't mind suffering, because I did like these positive, like really positive opinions for like 3 years, and I was able to think positively more naturally, but it was a stressful 3 years. I really had to work on, like, okay, breathe, relax your muscles, okay, because my brain is like, oh, it's like, you're killing me, man. It's like, But there's a part of me that says, well, no, I want to believe this is true. I want to believe that life is wonderful, and God loves me all the time, and God wants good things for me all the time, and God doesn't want to punish me or make me suffer or anything like that, and I want to believe all that, and stuff like that. But getting there was, so stressful. Yeah, it was like tug of war. Yeah. Okay. Good. Yeah. Yes. I like thinking that realistic is a combination of positive and negative. My favorite metaphor for something that's realistic is an atom. ATOM. An atom has positive and negative and neutral. And that is the closest thing to reality that I'm aware of, is an atom. And usually an atom has just as many negatives as it has positives. And so that helps me out. So yeah, if something's all negative, you could be like, well, let's look for the exceptions. I don't believe that's all negative. Let's look for the exceptions. And then we might actually feel better when we find just as many exceptions as we find examples. Maybe I have 5 reasons to hate myself and 5 reasons to like myself. Like, oh, well, maybe I could feel okay. So, yeah, to try and talk yourself out of the negative, but you don't have to be positive. Yeah, move towards the middle. Because that's another way of saying centered. When you're more centered, you do have more freedom in what direction to go, and you don't have to move so far to come back. You don't have to go all the way across the board to go back. You just go towards the center. So, pretty cool metaphor. I like it. With that. Yeah. And they're all meant to help us. Our positives and our negatives are supposed to help us. The negatives are for problem solving, and the positives are for learning, so we can solve better, more complex problems in the future. It all works together. It's just our body and our brain has just a hard time believing in the positive stuff. So it's almost like we got to be gentle with ourselves, sort of like, oh, come on, it's all right. Instead of saying, no, you can't think that. Because then they'll go, no, I can't. I'm going to think that. Yeah, yeah. Oh, somebody told me a few weeks ago, and he said it in a way that I just loved to hear. He said, eventually, you got to treat yourself the way you want other people to treat you. So if you want people to be nice to you, you got to be nice to yourself first. If you want people to be patient with you, you got to be patient with yourself first. If you want people to tell you you're a great person, you got to tell yourself you're a great person first. I'm like, wow. It's like, I believe that. I just never heard it like that before. It's like doing the golden rule on yourself. So good. So, was this good for tonight? Again, you ask excellent questions. Yeah. You got excellent questions. You always bring up excellent questions. Yeah. That's why I always like spending time with you. Even when you're worried and you go on rants about how things can be bad or things could be bad in the future, I like spending time with you. Mm-hmm. And yeah. Yeah. Oh, you're very welcome. You're very welcome. You're one of the people in the world I think is really deserves, really deserves kindness and patience for his issues, those kinds of things. Okay, so then, just like before, you could, make an appointment to see me whenever. We have been communicating just over email. You do check your email enough. I know that. So, so I'll just send you I'll follow up, send you a link of, the times I have available coming up in the next couple of weeks. And I think I've got a list available now into the end of January. So if you want to, pick a day or two in those, you could do that as well. Okie dokie. Yes. Uh-huh. 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 No, I think try email, because the way I've been doing it on my website, it hasn't been working as well as I wanted it to. There's bugs in it, and I'm also learning that there's a whole nother way that people can make appointments, and I didn't realize it. But I have to learn about how to do that first. So just contact me. Emails is fine with that. Yeah, very good. All right, Jacob. Well, if you're celebrating Christmas, I hope you have a very Merry Christmas. And if it's not a Merry Christmas, I hope it's a peaceful Christmas. A meaningful Christmas for you. And then I look forward to talking with you again in the future. You're welcome. Thank you very much. Thanks. Have a good night, then. Bye-bye.